All right, ready to dive in. Today we're looking at this article. It's called "The One Who Makes Things Happen and Evolve."
Interesting title.
Yeah, it's by Rafael Rodriguez.
Okay.
So, like,
Yeah.
we'll see what we find. But the goal is to, figure out what he means by this ambidextrous professional thing.
Okay.
And more importantly for us and everyone
Yeah.
listening, how does that actually relate to, like,
Yeah.
our work, our lives? Like, what does that even mean? And he kicks it off by sort of painting a picture of these two professional archetypes that we probably all see all the time.
Yeah. Okay.
The flawless executor
Yeah.
and the
I've definitely met a few of
right,
those.
right. And then the innovative strategist.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, neither of them are really enough these days.
Oh, interesting. Like he's setting up a little bit of a false dichotomy kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's like, well,
Right. Pick your poison.
right. Exactly.
But no, there's a third way. So, like, let's break it down a little bit. So he says the flawless executor, they're like the classic gets things done person. Follows every rule, every process, like keeps the ship running.
Right. But then presumably they can't adapt when needed.
They struggle when it's time to adapt or like change things up.
Yeah. Makes sense if they're really wired for that precision and that
Right.
efficiency. Then when things change, it's like
Right. Throws a wrench in the gears.
throws a wrench in the whole system.
And then, on the other side, we've got the innovative strategist
Oh, yeah.
always coming up with new ideas.
I know a few of those too.
Big picture visions,
Mm-hmm.
but often lack the follow-through, right, to make it a reality.
Right. So they're great at coming up with the ideas, but not so much.
Not so much with the execution.
Yeah.
And Rodriguez is saying this is the whole problem,
Mm.
In our world right now, things are changing so fast, you can't just be one or the other.
Right.
You need both.
You need both. Like you need to be able to both keep the lights on, but also, like figure out how to upgrade the whole power grid or
Oh,
something.
exactly. That's a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
And that's where he introduces this idea of the ambidextrous professional.
Okay. Yeah. So what is that?
So basically, it's someone who can do both, right?
Yeah.
They can balance
Okay.
execution and innovation seamlessly.
So they can keep the current systems running, but also be looking ahead to the future and what new technologies and strategies they might need to adopt.
Exactly. Managing the present and the future kind of at the same time.
Okay. It's like doing things right and doing the right things at the same time.
You got it.
That's pretty challenging, honestly.
And here's the thing. He thinks these people, they're already out there.
Really?
They're just kind of hidden in plain sight,
Oh, interesting.
And he gives some real world examples, which are actually really helpful, I think.
Oh, I always like a concrete example, so.
Okay, yeah. So picture this. You got like a tech lead, right, who's responsible for keeping the company's whole infrastructure running smoothly.
Yeah.
But at the same time,
Yeah.
they're exploring new automation tools and, ways to improve things, make things better, more efficient.
Wow. So they're keeping the current engine running, but also designing a new engine? That's going to be better.
Yes,
That's a really good way to think about it.
right. It's like managing the now and the future.
Yeah. And that's not just limited to tech, right? Like you could imagine that in other.
Oh, yeah, totally. He gave an example from marketing, too.
Okay.
Like imagine a marketing expert who can run those like data-driven campaigns based on the,
Yeah.
the data.
The historical data, the stuff that's worked in the past.
Exactly. But they're also experimenting with new data models and formats to
Yeah.
reach customers in new ways.
So they're not just like stuck in the past. They're thinking like, okay, what's going to work tomorrow?
Totally.
And even better than what worked yesterday.
It's like pushing the boundaries
Yeah.
without like sacrificing the core objectives,
Right.
And even get this.
Okay.
Project managers
Oh,
could be ambidextrous too.
Ooh, right.
Like he describes a project manager who can hit deadlines and budgets, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
But also at the same time is constantly analyzing processes,
Yeah.
looking for ways to make things better, streamline things.
Yeah. What's really interesting to me about all this is that he's not talking about a new job title, right?
Right?
Like, you're not going to see ambidextrous professional on someone's
Yeah.
LinkedIn profile.
Right.
This is like a way of approaching work.
Yes.
It's a mindset
It's a mind.
that really can be applied across
Like,
different.
transcends roles and industries.
Yeah, exactly. It's
Yeah.
not about your business card. It's about how you think.
You nailed it. It's about that mindset. It's about embracing those hard skills, the soft skills, and just being open to constantly learning and adapting.
Yeah, I like that a lot. So how do we actually cultivate that mindset? Like, how do we do this ambidextrous thing? So sounds like we need to figure out how to actually like be ambidextrous.
Right.
He gives us any tips on how to actually make that happen.
Yeah, he does. And he's pretty clear about the fact that it's not passive.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
it takes effort.
Okay.
It takes a willingness to kind of push past those comfort zones.
Yeah. If you're trying to be good at both, executing and innovating,
Right.
you're going to have to kind of
Yeah. Challenge yourself a little.
stretch yourself.
Yeah. And his first piece of advice is to like constantly push those boundaries.
Okay, so get out there, do things that are a little bit scary.
Yeah. He says that real growth, the kind that like really makes you better,
Yeah.
happens when we tackle those challenges that, maybe feel a little intimidating at first.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because, it's so easy to just get in a rut and do what we've always done, even when there might be better ways out there. So you
Right.
gotta...
Got to get uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And that often means taking risks, which is like his next point.
Okay.
But he's not saying, just jump into the unknown
Right.
blindly. Right. He specifically says calculated risks. Like you got to think it through. You got to.
Right. Like,
Yeah.
have a plan B.
Yeah.
Don't just jump into the void.
Right. It's about
Hopefully there's something down there.
being strategic, not reckless. Right.
Yeah.
And that leads us to another key thing: continuous learning, and something he calls unlearning.
Unlearning.
Yeah.
What's that all about?
So it's like, was a cutting edge yesterday, might be obsolete tomorrow.
Yeah.
So we got to constantly be learning
Sure.
new things, new technologies, new ways of doing things.
Mm-hmm.
But we also got to be willing to let go of the old stuff, the stuff that's not working anymore, the stuff
Yeah.
that might be holding us back.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
get that. But isn't there like a risk of getting rid of the good stuff along with the bad?
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think that highlights the need for being able to like evaluate things critically,
Mm-hmm.
right? Be able to tell what's still relevant, what needs to be, left behind.
Okay.
It's not about just rejecting everything that's old. It's about being open to new perspectives and
Yeah.
adapting as needed. And this kind of ties into his final action point,
Mm-hmm.
which is thinking outside the box.
Okay. So how do we do that? How do we think outside the box?
He says we got to question the status quo. We got to look at problems from different angles, and come up with creative solutions that might not be obvious at first.
Yeah, like get out of that little rut that we're in and see things from a new perspective.
Exactly.
That makes me think of a time when I had to implement a new system
Oh, yeah.
at work, and it was a bit of a gamble.
Oh.
But, we did our research, assessed the risks, had a backup plan.
Yeah.
And it ended up being a huge success. Like, it completely changed the way we did things.
See, that's a perfect example.
For the better.
Yeah, of taking that calculated risk and pushing past your comfort zone.
Yeah.
And it paid off. Now, he knows all of this it's not easy.
Right. It's not a walk in the park. Exactly.
And so he gives some tools and frameworks that can kind of help along the way.
Oh, okay. I'm all for that. Give me the tools. Give me the frameworks.
Okay, so first up, he's a big fan of agile and lean methodologies.
Okay. Yeah, those are all about like continuous improvement and being adaptive, right? You can change course.
Yeah, you're not locked into a rigid plan.
Yeah, right.
You can adapt as you go based on what you're learning.
And getting feedback.
Yeah.
As
Yeah.
you're going along.
He also mentions design thinking,
Okay.
which is all about putting the user at the center of things, really understanding their needs
Yeah, I like that.
and coming up with solutions that actually work for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can't just design something in a vacuum.
Right. You got to think about the people who are actually going to be using it.
Exactly.
And then he also suggests embracing a growth hacking mindset.
Okay. What's that all about?
It's a data-driven approach
Okay.
that emphasizes experimentation,
Mhm.
rapid iteration,
Okay.
and constantly looking for new creative ways to grow.
So it's all about testing things, seeing what works, and then,
Yeah.
moving on.
Adapting quickly
Yeah.
and not being afraid to fail.
Exactly.
Right.
And finally, he mentions change management frameworks like 80K and Cotter.
Okay. Yeah. Those can be really helpful.
Yeah, they provide a structured approach to guide people through periods of change.
Right. Because change can be scary. And, having a framework can really help people navigate that.
It's like having a map when you're going through, unfamiliar territory.
Yeah.
You might encounter some detours, but you can still,
Yeah. You can still get where you're going.
find your way.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's laid out a pretty Pretty good roadmap, I think, for becoming more ambidextrous.
Mm,
Takes effort, you know?
yeah, it's a journey.
Even it being comfortable. But it sounds like it's a worthwhile journey. You
Yeah.
know, it's one that's going to make us more adaptable, more resilient,
Totally.
more innovative.
And better able to deal with whatever the world throws at us. Okay, so we've covered a lot, but Rodriguez actually leaves us with a few questions to think about
Oh, okay.
as we're kind of processing all this ambidextrous professional stuff.
I like a good question. What does he ask?
Well, first he just straight up asks, do you consider yourself an ambidextrous professional?
Ooh,
So, like, what do you think?
yeah.
After all this?
That's a That's a tough one. I mean, I'd like to think I'm getting there, you know.
Yeah.
I definitely like to focus. I like to get things done,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm also trying to be more, open to new ideas
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and challenge myself a little bit.
That's great. It's definitely a journey, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Not a destination.
And then his next question is, how do you balance execution and innovation in your work?
So, like, what does that actually look like for you?
Well, I've found that it helps to kind of have dedicated time for both, you know.
Oh, interesting.
Like I block out time on my calendar for just heads down work where I can really focus on
Yeah.
execution. And then I also have time for what I call creative exploration,
Mhm.
where I can just like brainstorm, research new things,
Nice.
play around a little bit.
I like that. So you're almost like creating those mental spaces for
Yeah.
for each mode.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's really smart. And then his last question is kind of interesting. It's about the environment that we work in.
Okay.
He asks, what would you ask of your leader or your team to enhance your ambidexterity?
That's a really good question. I think it's all about creating a culture where, both execution and innovation are valued,
Hmm.
right? Like leaders who encourage people to experiment,
Yeah.
to take risks, even if they don't always work out.
Reminds me of this one project I was working on where at first my team was kind of hesitant to try anything new.
Yeah.
But then once we started brainstorming and just like throwing ideas out there, the innovation just like it took off.
Sometimes you just got to get those creative juices flowing.
Exactly.
And sometimes those failures, they lead to the best ideas.
Totally. So yeah, as we wrap up this deep dive into the ambidextrous professional,
Mhm.
the key takeaway here is that it's not just about individual growth,
Right.
it's about a whole organization evolving.
Yeah. When companies embrace this idea, it makes them more agile, more innovative, more
Mhm.
resilient to change.
Yeah. So for everyone listening, I encourage you to think about these questions. Like, where do you fall on the spectrum of ambidexterity? What can you do to cultivate this mindset, both in your own work and with your teams?
It's all about finding that balance, right?
Yeah.
Between execution and innovation and constantly learning and growing.
Well said. That's a great way to put it. So until next time, happy deep diving.